About 20 years ago, I began to work with a group throughout California to bring together science educators to think about a way that we could collaborate and share our passion for teaching science with others. I met Phil Lafontaine in one of those meetings, and Phil is from the Sacramento area, a former middle school geology teacher, and a fabulous professional developer. And now is at the California Department of Education as a director of professional learning. And Phil is our champion at the California Department of Education as we move into next generation science standards. Would you say a few words about that, Phil? Thank you, Phil Lafontaine.
So thank you, everybody, for having me here. And I am representing my boss, Tom Torlakson, who unfortunately could not be here today, but is very supportive. In case you know his background, he is a science teacher. And he continues to remind us and me every day, every time he sees me, he goes, you know, we need to talk about that science, because he's very committed to this. But I need to just stop for 1 second and thank Dr. Malloy for having a very excellent school. And I'm going to take a personal reason because my son graduated from San Diego State. And what's even more important is after he graduated, he actually got a job. And he's not coming home. So go Aztecs. I'm all there. I'm there for it. So anyhow, very appreciative of it. A good education, and he's got a job. That's the best news. But, you know, Tom Torlakson, one of the things that's very unique, and I got to hand it to my boss, when he came into the office, it wasn't, let's just do status quo. The first thing he did is he brought on a task force to look at what's the transition. And at first I kept thinking, transition to what? But then you start talking to Tom a little bit more, and what you find out is he's really interested in educating the whole child, not just some of the child, and not just some children. He really wants to educate every kid. He really wants to have a full, balanced curriculum, which, thank God, because STEM, that's what I went to the department for, was to promote science education in STEM. So as my career evolved in the department, all of a sudden I became the director of this unit, and then all of a sudden of the division, and now here I am sitting here as one of the point people for developing the NGSS. And I think what's important is that we need to really look at how science education is occurring. We need to look at what is it we're expecting our students, because we need to, and they deserve the best. You know, we made a promise to all California students that they would get a good education, and now we need to ensure that that occurs. So I wanted to just talk a little bit today, and I'm going to be here at 3 o'clock, I guess, in this room, to talk about and to get comments from anyone about NGSS. But let's just talk a little bit about where we are and how this process is proceeding and how you can be involved. So the first thing is, you know, NGSS was developed based upon the National Research Council framework. And it's unfortunate that they called it a framework because we also have frameworks in California. But just remember, this National Research Council framework was really not just something brand new. It's not something we just kind of dreamt up. What it was is it was built upon a lot of research. It's built upon the AAAS document a long time ago, built upon the national standards that we developed in the 90s. And then there was the document How People Learn. And then it's Taking Science to School. And then the science report on student labs. There's so many. And we now know a lot more about how students learn science and how we can help them. That's what NGSS is really about. It's really about what do we know and how can we really facilitate their education. So, you know, when the superintendent and the State Board of Ed signed on to be a lead state, which I then became the point person for, they made the commitment at that time that they would seriously consider at that time, and when NGSS was finished, that they would adopt it whole cloth. And so here we are now in the nexus of trying to make sure that that occurs. So what the legislation also says is that by July of 2013, which is coming up very soon, we need to have, the superintendent needs to submit a set of standards to the board. And then by November, they're supposed to make some decision. And so there's 3 things that the board can do at that time. They can either adopt it as the superintendent recommends, They can modify it or they can reject it. If they reject it, which we hope that they don't, that they actually give us a written response as to why are they rejecting these. So really what we have also done to ensure that NGSS is appropriate for California, we've developed a a science expert panel, and one of your representatives is Nancy Taylor over here, and she was also on our state review team. And we have Donna Ross, that is also a professor here in San Diego, to really help us think about this. And they've done this research, and they have been reviewing these NGSS a few weeks ago. And what they finally came up with is full consensus that NGSS is appropriate for California students. That they think the learning progressions, the depth of content, the practices, the cross-cutting themes are really what California really needs for schools. So I think that's a huge statement. The National Research Council has come out and said NGSS standards meet the letter and the intent of what the NRC framework is all about. That's really huge too. Remember that Dr. Helen Quinn was the chair of the National Research Council's framework. So those are very important pieces. The National Science Teachers Association has come out and said NGSS is what the nation needs. Now, thinking in California, we have the California Science Teachers Association, K-12 Alliance, the Science Subject Matter Project here in California, CSL.net, Children Now, Ed Trust West, Riverside County Office of Ed, and the list goes on of folks who are standing behind NGSS in full support for their adoption. So we've been doing sessions around the state, and we just finished the last one yesterday, and we'll do one this afternoon at 3 to hear what the public has to say. And really what is happening is that overwhelmingly, they're all in support. So this is good news, because next week when I go to the board, that's what I'm going to say. When you look at all the public comments that we're getting, there are some concerns, and we'll talk about those in a second, but in general, everyone's in agreement that NGSS is what California students need. And I think that's a huge statement and will help to actually fulfill that promise for students that we're going to give them a good education. But what are some of the issues? Well, you probably can think real quick. Let's see, resources in the classroom. How much money, teachers, are you spending per year? And trust me, I as a teacher and as a husband of a kindergarten teacher, we spent a lot of money on our classrooms. How about professional development? We're not looking for immediate implementation. In fact, we're looking for transformation. We have kind of a perfect storm that's occurring. You've got Common Core that's asking students to not just read about something, but to actually communicate their information. And what's the evidence that they use? You've got the math world sitting over here saying, we want kids to think critically about math, not just to do a formula that they don't know what it's for, that this formula actually has a purpose and it has a reason why we do it this way, and what's that understanding? And now here comes science, trying to think about what do we know about the natural world, how did we come to know about it, and how can we actually help our students think further? That's the value of the cross-cutting themes. It's very interesting in California today what our standards are about what do we know today. How is it helping them to think tomorrow? And that's what the cross-cutting themes, the practices are all about, really trying to give our kids that 21st century information. But we're not looking for just implementation. We're looking for a transformation. This perfect storm has got to come together, and it's got to really provide for our students the education that we all need. The other thing that's coming up, of course, is time to teach. Too long we've been in an essentialist curriculum. We have been talking only about reading and can they do the phonics? Can they decode? Understanding what they read? Really? Did we really want them to do that? And then think about what it is that they read and can they converse it out? Mathematics, of course, was always about just knowing the formula. So we've really got to transform our schools. And teachers, I know, being a teacher of now the state, it's difficult. And so we have to provide that professional development. So we are thinking at the state many times about, so when we do finally start to make this transformation, we've got to start with awareness. And that's kind of what you're doing today. What's the awareness? And then how do we implement so that we finally get to that transformation? So we're thinking about all this. We will have a set of standards to the state board in July, and I hope that you follow this, and I'm hoping that the board adopts in July. But I bet it'll probably be September or November. So thank you very much, and I'll be here at 3 o'clock. Thank you very much.